And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick alongside Scarlett Fu, taking you through to the closing bell with a global simulcast. It starts now. Tim Stenovic joining us from the radio booth. Nora Melinda in today for Carol Masser. Welcome to our audiences across all of our Bloomberg platforms, including our partnership with YouTube, Tim Stenovic. Green across the screen for most of the major indices, but of course, we have two big catalysts coming up on the calendar within the next 24 hours.
I think you would be referring to CPI and then the kickoff of big bank earnings tomorrow. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Sir.
Looks like we're reading the same stuff, Romaine Bostick.
Yeah.
That's always good news when we're on the same page. Hey, there's also the trade element here, and I think that's what people thought and certainly kind of did dominate today's trade, even though we didn't see a big variation between gains and losses. The comments about President Trump kind of saying, okay, maybe not 30% for Europe, we're open to negotiating, given what happened over the weekend, might have given a little bit of a relief to investors out there today.
I mean, definitely some relief that we are seeing here with all indexes ending in the green. As we were saying earlier, if you went to sleep on New Year's Day and you woke up today, lots happened in between. But if you look at the S&P 500, not much has changed.
Yeah, I go to Tim's point about, the trade tariffs and the threatened tariffs not showing up in the price action, but showing up in activity, because volume is certainly down compared to the 30-day average.
Yeah, and we should point out, of course, I think the earnings picture is really going to be one that drives this market, not so much for the second quarter results, but obviously the commentary that a lot of CEOs and CFOs were unwilling to give the last go round. This time around, they might not have as much cover. Green across the screen here on this Monday afternoon for most of the major indices. The Dow Jones Industrial Average looking like it's going to close out the day higher by more than 80 points, or about 0.2%. The S&P up just about 10 points on the day. We'll call it about 0.1% as we wait for these numbers to settle. The NASDAQ Composite adding about 0.3%. And the Russell 2000, that's your outperformer on the day, again, up 15 points, or about 0.7%.
All right, taking a look at how things split up in terms of gainers and decliners today. We did see more stocks move higher in the S&P, 286 to the upside, Scarlett 213 to the downside.
And that's reflected in the IMAP as well. So take a look at the 11 sectors in the S&P 500. That big red slice that you see there is tech, but it's only down by 0.2%. The leading decliners here are energy stocks as oil prices sink, and material stocks also lower by 0.4%. Best performers, communication services, financials before the banks report earnings tomorrow, and real estate investment trust.
All right, on the gainers side, a new all-time high for Fastenal. The company reported earnings earlier today. Shares 4% higher at the close. The company reported net sales for the second quarter that were up 8.6% over the same period last year. It did meet the average analyst estimate. We had Dan Florness on the show, the company's CEO. He said that his industrial customers are starting to see business turn around. Here's what he said, quote, "The knife has stopped dropping." What he was referring to is the trying to catch a falling knife over the last few years that really in the U.S. has been industrial production. I did ask him, and Nora asked him too, about the impact of tariffs. And he said they tried to move their supply chain back in 2018 during this first round, and they were able to make some changes, not necessarily bringing anything back to the U.S., just not possible right now. Too early to say for his customers, though, whether this new tariff regime will prompt them to move manufacturing back to the U.S.
It's just a reminder of how long it takes to actually move your supply chain back to the U.S. If they were talking about this back in 2017 and weren't able to get very far.
Yeah, I mean, do you remember the move back in 2017 and 2018 was to move everything out of China and go to Vietnam or Indonesia or India? Well, now it kind of doesn't matter where you are if you're not in the United States, because all of those countries are getting tariffed as well. Hey, did any of you guys see Superman over the weekend?
No. Was it good?
I didn't see it either. A lot of people did see it,
We
though.
look at you when we see Superman.
I was going to say.
Wow. Oh, you guys are the best. Warner Brothers Discovery shares up more than 2%. This after the company did say that they brought in at least $115 million domestically. It did take in $220 million worldwide. This according to a statement from Warner Brothers. $125 million in ticket sales in the U.S. So that did beat expectations of $115 million. This is just the opening chapter in a 10-year plan to interweave movies and TV shows based on DC comic book characters such as Batman and Wonder Woman. Haven't they done this before?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm just
They've done this.
wondering.
And so, I mean, I don't know. Do you think DC is going to get it right this time? I mean, everyone's saying, okay, you had a decent box office domestically, though don't look at the international numbers, Tim. It was not as good. But this idea that maybe they could finally build off this and actually truly build up something that's comparable to the Marvel universe?
Look, I don't know what it takes to have a successful franchise. No
I don't
question.
either, but I like the opinion.
But we can look and see what the Marvel universe has done, right?
The peanut gallery speaks.
Yeah, exactly. I think James Gunn knows a little more than we do when it comes to what makes a successful movie. And finally, I do want to talk about shares of Kenvue real quick. They finished the day higher today by more than 2%. It's the company behind Tylenol, Neutrogena, Listerine, formerly the consumer healthcare division of J&J. The company said that CEO Thibaut Mongon is going to leave the company as it continues to revamp. The board director, Kirk Perry, will take over as interim CEO effective immediately. They faced push from activist investors for changes on how the company is structured and run ever since it was spun off from J&J just a couple of years ago. Once again, Kenvue shares up by more than 2.2%, Nora.
Well, a couple decliners that I'm keeping an eye on right now. We had Waters, that is a life sciences company, about $18 billion in market cap. It fell for double-digit losses when we ended at the close today after saying that it'll merge with Becton Dickinson's biosciences and diagnostic solutions business in a reverse Morris Trust transaction. That's valued at about $17.5 billion. We had Jefferies analysts saying that they expect the stock to trade down due to the deal size and variables added to a clean replacement cycle story. But if you look at the stock on a year-to-date basis, down about 18%. I know it's Monday, but I did want to talk about an alcohol company. I'm looking at Constellation Brands, and we're seeing shares that also fell at the close today after President Trump declared a 30% tariff for Mexico and the EU, which of course we know these are key markets for those drink makers. So tariffs are really the story here. But this is a $28 billion company. They own Modelo, Corona, a lot of the names that we know here. But shares are down about 26% this year. So not great news here for the brand. Maybe people are going to healthier alternatives. We'll see.
I like the fact you picked an alcohol company because you really, truly are filling Carol Masters.
Have to live up to it the best I can. Also, Fluence Energy, that's an energy this is an energy company, and we saw energy is the worst performing sector in the S&P 500 today, and this was one of the names that was in the red. Mizuho cut the stock to neutral from outperform. They're also pointing toward this tariff impact, and additionally, the Republican tax and spending bills effects on the clean energy sector. The company is about $1.4 billion in market cap, but I'm looking at the year-to-date as well, down 50%. Not looking good.
All right, let's get a quick check on yields. Continue to see a steepening of the curve. Treasuries overall falling for a third straight day. That's pushing yields higher. But two interesting dynamics are playing out. One is obviously that you're seeing much greater moves in yields on the longer end of the curve to the upside. But on the short end of the curve, take a look at that. A 1 basis point move, 1.5 if you want to be particular, on that 2-year yield. And that has been the narrow range that we've actually seen on the shorter end of the curve now for quite some time. In fact, the past 3 sessions, we basically had 1 basis point, 1 basis point, and then 3 basis points. And then if you keep going out, it really doesn't get much wider than that. And I think it is kind of telling, Tim and Nora, this idea that maybe you have a market, at least in the Treasury market, with a lot of folks right now on the sidelines.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens when it comes to CPI. We'll see what happens when it comes to the big banks reporting earnings. In the meantime, I want to talk a little bit about return to office. Yeah, we're still talking about that. It's back in the news this week because Starbucks employees who work at corporate headquarters are apparently going to be required to come in 4 days a week. This is a focus. Excuse me?
Which 4?
I don't know.
Maybe they get to select the day that they stay home.
Well, I know that there are some places where they're like, okay, everybody has to come in at least on Monday because that's like our in-office day. And it kind of looks like not a lot of people go to work on Friday, just anecdotally speaking, at least here in New York.
Understandably
judging by the subway, I don't know.
Well, we're all here, right? We're in person, but I think this is really interesting for Starbucks. I mean, I was just at Starbucks yesterday, and I had a nice refresher. I don't know if you guys have had the refreshers, but fantastic. And we're really seeing, Starbucks really just trying to do better. They're trying to have a turnaround story here. So I guess they need people in the office to do it.
Well, it starts with the culture, according to Brian Niccol, who's the CEO of Starbucks. We're keeping an eye, of course, on the tariff story. And even though there's new threats of tariffs and companies still aren't able to say very much. There is evidence that it is affecting certain industries. The world's largest swimming pool maker says they will likely hike prices for a second time this year because of Trump's proposed tariffs. This is a Spanish company, Fluidra, talking about this, and they said how much they can't say right now. It really depends on what gets announced about China in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and this is kind of what I'm really interested in for this particular earnings season. The idea is whether we're going to hear more companies, certainly more U.S. companies, start to talk about the potential impact. We just had Nadia Lovell on the TV program a little while ago, and she was kind of alluding to this idea that we've collected in this country more than $100 billion in tariff revenue. But of course, we know that comes out of someone's pocket. And at least for right now, we have not actually seen that show up in some of these income statements or in some of the inflation data, and I do wonder if that's about to change.
And that's why the guidance tomorrow and throughout the rest of earnings season is going to be so important, the commentary that we hear. Although, is there more clarity? That's, about what the actual policies are.
At some point, company executives just need to say how they're moving forward, even if they don't have the clarity, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll
How
wait
big
to
of a
that.
swimming pool do you have, Scarlett?
Mine is massive.
All right, party at Scarlett's this weekend. Thanks for the invite.
I'm going.
Looking forward to it.